In this video, I will be discussing two of Raphael's artworks, the Marriage of the Virgin and the Transfiguration, as well as a brief overview of some of his artistic influences and how they came to be. Early life. Raphael Sanzio da Urbino, known as Raphael, was born in the central Italian city of Urbino in the Marche region in 1483. Raphael's mother, Magia Sciarla, gave birth to 3 children, but only Raphael survived. His father was Giovanni Santi, a competent painter attached to the Montefeltro court in Urbino. Some of his artworks include Annunciation, completed in 1490, Visitation, completed around 1488 and 1490, and the Tirani Chapel altarpiece, completed in 1491, which was a work Raphael was inspired by, as seen in the Bronzi altarpiece, where Raphael kept and reused the crown in God the Father and the Virgin Mary. Unfortunately, Raphael's mother died in 1491 when Raphael was only 8 years old, and his father died 3 years later, leaving Raphael to be cared for by his uncle, Bartolomeo. During this time, Raphael's talents began to grow, and so his uncle took Raphael to apprentice with Timoteo Viti, a well-known artist in Urbino, in 1495 at the age of 12. This apprenticeship would last until 1500, when Raphael joined the shop of one of the most famous painters at the time, Pietro Perugino. Raphael was definitely influenced by Pietro Perugino, as seen by The Marriage of the Virgin, completed in 1504, the Mon Crucifixion, completed around 1502 and 1503, and Small Cow Per Madonna, completed in 1505. These works have often been compared to Perugino's Marriage of the Virgin, Delivery of the Keys, Crucifixion, and Madonna and Child. Raphael was in his early 20s when he painted The Marriage of the Virgin. In this painting, Raphael utilized linear perspective along with symmetry to create a very harmonious painting. The orthogonal lines created by the smooth pavement and the diagonal lines engendered by the edges of the staircase create a feeling of depth to the artwork. Along with this, the figures in the positive space are significantly larger than the figures in the negative space. This illusion of perspective also adds to the feeling of depth to the artwork. Following the smooth pavement, we find a staircase that leads to a centrally placed temple. The temple is round, surrounded by symmetrically placed columns that are pressing onto the walls of the temple. Following these columns up, they are connected to each other by Roman arch-style architecture and a rectangular block above the arches that form a circle which protrudes outwards from the base of the temple. As we continue going upward, there are multiple windows, with the central window from our perspective being aligned with the door at the base of the temple. Going past the windows, the temple is covered by a dome roof, which adds a symmetrical feeling with the roof of the temple and the semicircle border at the top of the painting. Something interesting to note about the temple is the way in which the open door is transparent in such a detailed manner. Looking deeper into the doorway, you can see how it matches the sky in the upper negative space, along with the mountain landscape in the background. Another interesting thing to note is that if you zoom in on the temple where the center window is and go directly down, in between the Roman arch and the wave-like design, it says Raphael Urbanus. Moving back down, the strength of the color intensifies as we enter the positive space, and we see a priest with an embroidered garment that is dark green, red, and dark brown. We then see Mary and Joseph. Mary is wearing a red dress along with a blue drape wrapped around her dress. Joseph is wearing a teal garment and a yellow drape is wrapped around him. The surrounding members are wearing dresses and garments, and on Mary's side, they are all females, and on Joseph's side, they are all male. Their clothing is a mixture of green, red, blue, white, and brown, and because of this use of color, along with the symmetry and sense of depth, the focal point of the painting becomes the marriage. More specifically, the Marriage of the Virgin, taken from a book called The Golden Legend. The Golden Legend is a medieval book that basically tries to fill in all the missing stories in the Bible. The story states that there were a number of suitors who wanted to marry Mary, so each of those who wanted to marry her had a rod, and whoever's rod flowered would be the one who would marry her. Joseph's rod flowered, and so we see him in the painting holding a rod in his left hand, which has flowered. Some humor implemented from this is the man in front of Joseph, who has decided to break his rod across his knee out of frustration. Next, we see the priest bringing Mary and Joseph's hands together so that they can become married, and we can also see Joseph holding the ring out that he is about to give to Mary. Also, Mary is wearing a red dress with a blue drape, and the use of red and blue were common colors used by Renaissance artists to depict Mary. This artwork was painted for the Chapel of St. Joseph in the Church of San Francesco in Città de Castello, southeast of Florence. Patrons in Città de Castello sent 3 commissions to Raphael's teacher, Pietro Perugino, but due to Perugino's absence, they were completed by Raphael. As stated previously, Raphael's The Marriage of the Virgin is clearly influenced by Perugino's Delivery of the Keys and Marriage of the Virgin. While Raphael was still in the studio of Perugino, Perugino painted a panel of Marriage of the Virgin, which, in its composition, very closely resembles the central portion of his Delivering the Keys. Perugino's panel most likely served as the model for Raphael's The Marriage of the Virgin. His influence can be seen in the emphasis on perspectives, in the graded relationships between the figures and architecture. However, Raphael was able to recognize and remedy some of the weaknesses of his master's composition. He did so by relaxing the formality of Perugino's foreground figure screen and arranging the figures in great depth. The young artist not only provides them with greater freedom of action, but also bridges the gap between them and the building in the background more successfully due to the combined eloquence of the building and figures. The result is a painting that resembles the model very closely, but is nevertheless more fluid and better unified, illustrating Raphael surpassing his master. The Transfiguration was completed in 1520. There are 2 parts to this painting depicting 2 different biblical stories. In the lower portion, we have the story of the miracle of the possessed boy, and in the upper portion is the story of the Transfiguration of Christ on Mount Tabor. Christ is seen suspended here in a burst of illuminated clouds. Accompanying him on the right and left in the clouds are Moses and Elijah. Below him, in amazed astonishment, are his disciples, Peter, James, and John. 2 of them are shielding their eyes from the glory shining from Christ, and another one is praying on his knees. The Christ, Moses, and Elijah are the only ones in this painting hovering, distinguishing them from the rest. The crowd of people below are in a mixture of actions. Some are gazing upon or pointing to the transfigured Lord, while others are gazing at and pointing to the previously demon-possessed who had been miraculously healed by Jesus. Some are looking as if they can hardly believe their eyes, and the colors are very bright and varied. Even to his contemporaries, Raphael's Transfiguration must have seemed both beautiful and strange. It had few equivalents for sheer complexity among altarpieces of its time. It wasn't just amazing because of its diversity of elements, but also for the harmony of their integration. In this very grand composition, Raphael has summed up all the elements present in the best of contemporary painting. Light is the central and overpowering influence of the Transfiguration, especially seen in its effects on Peter, James, and John on the mountaintop. This painting was done with oil paints on wood instead of the usual canvas that Raphael would use. He showed advanced indications of mannerism and Baroque period techniques in this painting. The stylized, contorted poses of the lower half figures indicate mannerism. The dramatic tension within these figures and the use of light to dark, or tiri oscuro of contrast, represent the Baroque period of exaggerated motion to produce drama, tension, exuberance, or enlightenment. Commissioned in 1517 by Cardinal Giulio de' Medici as an altarpiece for the French Cathedral of Narbonne, of which he was archbishop, this painting was left unfinished by Raphael at his death when he died in 1520, and was completed by his assistants Giulio Romano and Giovanni Francesco Peni. This masterpiece now hangs in the Pinacoteca Apostolica, one of the Vatican museums. As a result of major restoration in 1977 by Vatican conservation experts, Raphael's Renaissance color palette is now fully visible and the painting has regained its pristine splendor. The restoration has also dispelled any lingering doubts about the painting's creator. Although unfinished, it was wholly Raphael's work.